That to me, it's peace of mind. It's peace for my team because my team knows that I'm going to be leading from the front, setting an example that they can follow. And if they're ever low on passion juice, all they got to do is pick up the phone.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's multifactorial for the organization as well as me personally.
I love this idea of viewing the business from the lens of the user or the customer or the client. And I don't think a lot of businesses are set up that way, where it's like, hey, I'm doing this for them and I'm doing it in a way where I can put myself in their shoes.
Allan has started and grown several multi-million-dollar businesses. His mission is to help you do the same. Welcome to the Business Growth Pod, building the future one entrepreneur at a time.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Business Growth Pod. I'm Allan Draper. I'm your host. I'm excited for our guest today. His name is David Tamm. He's the founder of multiple thriving companies, including Firepoint Solutions. That's one of the top 5 real estate CRM platforms in the country, which is crazy if you think about that, because there's so much competition there. And Cast Services, which is one of the fastest growing research-driven technology firms in the real estate space, which is now serving over 370 markets. His latest venture, I was just watching the video on this. It's Pencerita. It's actually a pretty cool platform, but it's a groundbreaking legacy preservation platform that makes it easy for people to document their most important life moments. So welcome to the show, David. Glad to have you.
Oh, goodness. Thank you for having me. That was a really kind introduction. Thank you.
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, it sounds like you've got your hands in quite a few different things. You obviously, have this awesome background in the military. Thanks so much for your service, man. I mean, I respect people so much that are willing to do that. And my dad and my grandpa and a bunch of my uncles, all veterans. And yeah, so thanks for your service. What was it about the military that you feel kind of gave you this springboard opportunity into entrepreneurship?
God, what a wonderful question. Thank you for saying thank you, by the way. Like when people say that to me, it really does mean a lot, right? Because I also have family legacy going generations, that we're in the military. And I love America. The fact that we have these freedoms and we can be doing this podcast. So thank you for that. The military, gosh, to be brutally honest, for me, it wasn't a calling initially. It was almost a last resort, right? Because I had been kicked out of CU Boulder, partying too hard, was bartending, got injured in a bartending accident. And I connected with one of my door guys who was like, man, you're selling yourself short. You're too smart for this. You know what I mean? So I went and talked to a recruiter. And then that was just like the door that kicked open the rest of my life, right? And for me, the military, it provided structure that I really needed in my life, right? Because my parents were kind of laissez-faire when it came to enforcement of regulations, that kind of stuff. Sure, we had chores, but they were both super busy doing their own thing. And so for me, it was a breath of fresh air of structure, accountability, but unlimited potential based off of how hard you want to work and what you want to do. I mean, you can climb the ladder and be a 4-star general and run the military if you want to, if you're smart enough and driven enough, right? And I just love that about the military. For me, it was also, they paid for all of my education. I don't think people understand, when you're in the military as an enlisted person, you go to school for free. And you don't even use your GI Bill. So I did 134 college credits in 18 months because it was free. Right. And I had paid for all of my schooling prior to, coming into the military. So it was that, all of those factors, and then the ability to travel overseas and see how the other half lives. Right. It was just massive for me. And it was one of the reasons that I came up with Pencerita is I want everybody to be able to tell their story and preserve their legacy, regardless of what language you speak and where you are. So does that answer your question in kind of a long-winded manner?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's so much that, just having that military background adds to an entrepreneur. And I think that somebody that doesn't go into the service, I think they can get bits and pieces if they really try. For 2 years of my life, in my early 20s, I lived in South America. I lived in Chile, and I was a missionary for my church. And I didn't come home. I could only talk to my parents twice a year, Mother's Day and Christmas. We weren't emailing. We were only writing letters, and it took 2 weeks to get a letter. And I thought it was really cool because, I mean, now I think it's cool. Back then I didn't, but my mom would ask me a question. And so when she wrote the letter, it took 2 weeks to get to me. She'd ask me a question like, how are you doing? Where are you? What's the weather like? Who are you with? What area are you in?
Mm-hmm.
And then by the time the answer got back to her, it was a month later because I would answer it 2 weeks after she wrote it. But there were all these opportunities that I had to, I think one of them was I wasn't so focused on myself in a really pivotal time in my life, right? And I think the military offers this, where it's like usually young kids getting enlisted, and it's like, hey, I'm going to go, I know this is going to be better for me, but this is going to be hard. This is going to be a sacrifice. I'm going to be focused on the people around me. I'm going to be focused on the people that I'm serving. And I think that adds so much to an entrepreneur to be able to sacrifice, because I honestly think that's what having a business is. It's short-term sacrifice for long-term gain. And I'm just thankful I had that opportunity. I'm assuming that you had a similar experience.
Yeah, I'm just taking some notes here while you talk. You nailed it. For me, I always had a really, strong work ethic. I've been working full-time since I was 14, right? But like the military took it to a whole nother level of personal accountability and responsibility in that same environment where, yeah, you're going to be sleeping in a ditch, right? You're going to deprive of food. They're going to shave your head. You're going to be being screamed at. But then you're also going to get all the accolades and get to run a $300 million weapon system and go save lives, which, all of which I've done. And that kind of like turns the volume down. I'll use the Fight Club line on the rest of life, right? Things just become easier once you've been through the really, really, really hard stuff in life. And I think that's whether you're in the military or just general life experience, right? And then like that sacrifice of personal comfort, but then also knowing that you're a cog of something, larger than yourself. Right. And that to me is what business is. It's okay. We've all got to row. We've all got to share the load. And it's about the greater good of this organization, so long as it's being captained by somebody that believes in those same values.
100%.
Totally agree with you.
I mean, I think it's interesting when you work with a team and there's something that is greater than the individual that's at stake. Like you talked about saving lives, because there are studies that show that people believe that their number one motivation for being successful in the workplace is money. But in reality, money's like it's either third or fourth on the list. And the number one motivator for high achievers in the workplace, even though they will not admit it or they're, tricking themselves, is working together to achieve a common goal that you believe in. There's nothing as human beings that motivate us greater than that.
I will give you a real world example I've been very fortunate enough to have connections in the technology space to bring together a really strong team at Pencerita. But I mean, we've got people that are taking massive pay cuts, 6-figure pay cuts to come work on a platform that they think really can move the needle and let like our greatest generation be remembered how they want to be remembered, because they have lost people. You know what I mean? And to me, like, that was shocking. I was, you know what I mean? It was like, this is never going to work. But I think it was the appropriate articulation of the vision and what we are trying to accomplish. And if that can be conveyed with 100% integrity, then it's a good fit. But we also have just as many people that are like, I'm financially driven and I'm going to go do this other thing, but we can always circle back later. And that's totally okay, because that's kind of that pre-vetting process of like, have you read Good to Great? One of the old classics.
Oh, that's one of my top 5 business books of all time.
Dude, yes. So I just finished it again on audiobook. I like to do audiobooks while I work out, so I can kind of double dip.
Yeah.
And the limited seats on the bus, right? Being aligned with that same kind of core value. And I mean, it was so funny because as I was listening to that chapter in the book, it was happening to me in real life. And I was like, okay, this is real. You know what I mean? Have you ever experienced something like that before?
Yeah, for sure. And that book, I actually read every single year at some point and Jim Collins is like I consider him one of my mentors, even though I've never met him, because like that book changes as my experience changes. And so as my companies grow, and I always say that an individual's business, so the entrepreneurs or the founders or the people that are operating a business, they cannot operate that business that is above their level of personal development. And so I use that book to kind of help me get there. And every year I find something new in there. But that's 100% right. You talked about getting the right people on the bus and matching goals. And I think that's the best way to recruit people. And I've hired, I would say 50% of the people that I've hired took pay cuts. And the reason why they did is because they believed what I believed. We had a shared vision of what we were trying to do. And Pencerita is very cool. I checked out the sizzle video for it.
Oh, thanks.
And it's kind of hitting home for me because I'm getting to this point where I'm starting to think a little bit about my legacy. I'm to the point where I'm financially secure. And so I'm kind of like, well, what's next? Right. And Pencerita seems like this really cool platform for just enabling people to share that legacy and share with, and I don't even understand everything that it does, but it just really hits home for where I am personally and where I see like the next few steps in my life.
Oh my gosh, thank you. That means a lot. And we can dive a little bit deeper into kind of the functionality if you'd like. Okay. So I'll give you the backstory. I fell asleep on a plane and woke up with the idea, whether it was God, aliens, whatever, like the idea was given to me. I fully believe that. Right. But I had an experience when I was kind of in my getting out of the military at that time period, 2013, 2014, 2015. I was taking leave to visit my grandparents and my parents and everything. And I would fly down to Florida. And my very last conversation with my grandfather that I ever had, I remember extremely well. He was struggling with some memory issues, later life. He was in his 90s. And I just got the sense that, he didn't know who I was. And yet I have these black and white photographs of him on an old burned out Nazi fighter. You know what I mean? And I don't even know the story behind it, and all of these stories are now just gone, and so I wanted to come up with a way that somebody can be remembered how they want to be remembered, but then also share stories after they're gone. So one of the really cool functionality pieces of Pencerita is the ability to create long form content with any type of media. So music, art, pictures, video, text. If you don't have use of your digits or you lost them in the military, you can transcribe your voice. And then whether you want to use one of our curated content paths based on major life events, you get a new job or you have a kid or if someone gets a diagnosis, or you can kind of choose your own adventure. You're just at a ball game or shooting guns and having a beer, right? Then you can take that content and you can create triggers to have it shared at a later time. So I just had my 2-year wedding anniversary with my wife, and I'm building content right now for our 10th anniversary. Whether I'm alive or dead, she's going to get it of how much I love her and how much she means to me, right? Coming from 39-year-old David, when 10 years later, she'll get that message. We have a really cool piece of technology as well, where you can collaborate. So you can actually create content and other people can be there in the system at the same time. So think of a wedding, right? So bride and groom, they're out there focusing on their special day. All of the guests can be uploading their videos and their pictures in a private environment, right? No toxicity, no unsolicited feedback that you didn't ask for like other platforms. But then that allows the bride and the groom to relive that day through other people's eyes anytime they want.
That's very cool.
Yeah, thanks, man. And so we're trying to add some new pieces of technology so that people can preserve their legacy on their terms in a non-toxic environment.
I think it's really cool because it can be therapeutic too. You can be, as you were talking, I was just thinking about, some of the events in my life. It's cool and what's funny, David, is that I've seriously written letters to myself to read in the future. I'm not kidding. Or one time on LinkedIn, I shared a letter to my 20-year-old self, right? When I turned 40, I wrote a letter to my 20-year-old self. What would I tell that individual, right? And anyway, that's really cool. I think there's a lot of uses for that. What is it about? Why does it change when you have passion about an idea as an entrepreneur? Because I can tell, I can feel it, right? Coming from you.
Yeah.
How does that change the experience in starting a business?
That's such a fantastic question. So I'll tell you, the first 2 that I did, startups, I was interested in, I was good at, but I wasn't super passionate about, and so every day felt like a grind, and that's kind of very selfish. But I also think that I wasn't maximizing my spiritual or intellectual potential because I wasn't passionate about it, right? So I'm also doing a disservice to the organization, right? But now that I have found something that, I wake up excited. Like, what do I get to work on today to try and help other people with telling their story, right? So my marriage is better, my life is better. It doesn't feel like work. Yeah, I still work 14-hour days and I work evenings and weekends, but it doesn't feel like I'm doing 90 hours a week. Does that make sense? Yeah. And I probably have a work problem, right? Like, as a lot of entrepreneurs do, and that's okay for right now. But I also feel that because I have a vested passion, interest in it, it also opens up all these trap doors in my mind of how would I use it, right? And becoming empathetic with the user, how would they use it? Right. And I believe that is a supercharger, a bolt-on supercharger for the creative process for the entrepreneur. And so if you're starting a company, for anybody that's listening to this, and you don't just feel 1,000% in, this is it, I'm so passionate, I'm hungry, I guarantee you there's something out there that is. You just haven't found it yet. And for me, it was restaurants and bartending and military, and I was a mechanic and I built decks and I painted houses and blah, 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 blah. But I finally found that one thing at age 39 that, if I could do this for the rest of my life, I would. Right. And then that to me, it's peace of mind. It's peace for my team, because my team knows that I'm going to be leading from the front, setting an example that they can follow. And if they're ever low on passion juice, all they got to do is pick up the phone.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's multifactorial for the organization as well as me personally.
I love this idea of viewing the business from the lens of the user or the customer or the client. And I don't think a lot of businesses are set up that way, where it's like, hey, I'm doing this for them and I'm doing it in a way where I can put myself in their shoes. The best businesses are the ones that view everything. And it's hard to do. It's hard to do because as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, you're like, man, I'm just trying to keep the lights on. I'm trying to meet payroll. I'm trying to make ends meet with all of these different pressures and these different responsibilities that I have. But I think of like Amazon, man, that business, it is like, it's almost hard to not buy something from Amazon. And they've just built it from the user experience. And I think they've kind of gone through, well, what are the frustrations? Well, we don't want to wait to buy something, but we don't want to go to the store either, right? I can buy something. I live in Phoenix. There are certain things that I can buy and get the same day delivered to my house. It's absolutely wild, but they view it. And as an entrepreneur, that's what we have to do. We have to put ourselves in the consumers, the customers, the clients, the users, in their shoes. And one of the worst things, I got to tell you this experience. I just closed on a property in Florida. I was there last week and I was looking for I think it was a pool cleaner. And I called this one individual and I was asking him some questions. And one of his responses was, well, if I do that, I'm not going to make any money. And I told him I was a business owner and like, I kind of understand that. But as a consumer, that's like, that I don't care about that.
No.
Right. And so as business owners, we have to understand that's not my customer's job to worry about whether I'm going to make money, but it's my job to make sure that something's really streamlined. I really am interested in checking out Pencerita. I'm reading right now 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I've been talking about it a lot. I did an episode that was exclusively about habit 1, be proactive. A couple of weeks ago that dropped. For our listeners, make sure you check that out. Very powerful discussion on that episode. But one of the habits is being able to see the end from the beginning. And Pencerita is really cool because when you are 2 years in marriage and you're already thinking about 10 years in marriage, it just changes your mentality, right? And I think marriage, it's such a difficult thing and it's so important and it's so hard to stay married. Most people get divorced. But when you're able to see the end from the beginning, so you're 2 years in, but you're already talking about 10 years or further down the road, I think Pencerita is a really cool platform to get our mind right, because then what we're able to do is we're able to put those big rocks in the jar first, the most important things in our life, because we're thinking not what do I want to be focused on, or what are the decisions I want to be making to get results today, but in 10 years. And I think that's just a powerful concept.
Man, there is so much to unpack there, but thank you. That was the goal, is to get people more intentional about communicating messages. And it's not all messages of love. You know what I mean? You can also, I've got things that I did in the military that I just can't talk about, but after I'm dead, I want that story to be told. That's do you know how therapeutic that is for me to know that my story is going to be told, even if I walk outside and get hit by a truck tomorrow? Like that's huge. And so, yeah, I totally agree that all entrepreneurs should be thinking about. And the biggest question for me is, what problem am I solving? What clear and present danger problem am I solving? And I feel like, because, we're dealing with the largest transfer of wealth in the history of the human race over these next 10 years, right? And people are handing down money and donating money, and they want to tell their story that's associated with how hard they worked to be able to give that to somebody else, you know what I mean, at the appropriate timing. But also in times of, you get a flash. My wife works in cancer research, like first in human trials, FDA approval processes. And there are people, it's like, we got 90 days to live.
Jeez.
And if I were to pose that to you, great, you got 90 days to live. Like, tell me your entire life story. There isn't a really good way to do that right now. You know what I mean? With all the different tools and media out there, other than, well, I'm going to write a book and that's going to take 6 months and I'll be dead 90 days ago. Right. So I would postulate for your listeners and user base, what problem are you trying to solve? And if you can't clearly identify it within 5 minutes, you need to refine and iterate on that idea, right? So, and then I want to pivot on the Amazon thing. So you're exactly right. I had a chance to go work at a think tank at Google and see kind of behind the curtain, just a little tiny bit. And I believe one of the reasons Amazon is so powerful, it's not just the breadth of the category, right? It's the reviews. You get more feedback on consumer goods than any other platform, right? You go to Walmart.com, they have 6 reviews on a pair of tennis shoes. You go to Amazon, they've got 6,000. And that's, to me, I want to read all that and I want the market research, that other people have done for me before I'm going to go make that purchase decision. So I'm the same way. I have a problem with Amazon. If I log on, I'm probably going to buy something.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
That's exactly how it is. And there's this, and that really goes back to the business looking at itself as, providing the service and not the other way around. Sometimes some business owners get it mixed up. And I always say, you look at which direction the money flows. If money flows one direction, then the person that is providing the service and the respect and has to be like above the customer in all aspects is coming the other direction, right? So if I have a customer paying me, and I commonly say, my goal as a business owner is to focus on my people, because if I take care of my people, meaning my employees, they're going to take care of my customers, and my customers are going to take care of me.
Yeah.
And so if we have this consumer-based focus, I think it allows us, we've talked about problem solving a lot. It allows us to put ourselves in their shoes, show that sympathy and that empathy, and be able to create something that really adds value to their life, which, with Pencerita, what matters more? And as we're just talking, I'm thinking of all these ideas. Like, I don't share a lot of my business failures publicly. What's funny is that I'll do it every once in a while, not big stuff, but people do like that. They do respond to where I show a weakness, but I don't do it on the scale that I actually feel it or experience it. And this platform would be perfect if I got the question like, hey, that you have a grandson that you don't meet before you die, and he wants to start a business, or she wants to start a business, granddaughter, what are the top 3 things that you would recommend that they do? And it would kind of just get me thinking. And for them, I would unload, right? It's not just my Instagram platform, a bunch of people that I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like my grandchildren or my great grandchildren. And I would be able to share like the depths of my soul with them, right?
That's beautiful. I tell people whenever I do a podcast or content, like I have had way more failures than I have had successes, right? And I think that's part of being an entrepreneur and being honest with yourself about that. That's okay, right? And but also humanizes you for other people that it's okay to fail. You're exactly right. Now, imagine if you did that, but then every generation in your lineage did it for the next 300 years. then now, like, I feel like we as a human race are reinventing the wheel in our knowledge base every like 50 to 60 years. If I could learn the lessons of my grandfather and great grandfather, who his name, great granddad Bolaire, apparently he was like 6'9" and wore a size 38 shoe. I don't know, because we don't have any information about it.
Right.
But if we could capture that knowledge and learn from our ancestors in a really impactful manner, and then be able to accumulate all of that for our life lessons and our legacy, as a bloodline, and then as a community, and then as a global environment, my gosh, that could lead to world peace. You know what I mean? If we actually learn to communicate and hear each other's stories on a deep, impactful level, I think you're really onto something there. I love it.
Yeah, that's very cool. Man, this has been a great conversation. I'm interested in following the Pencerita journey, just following along and seeing, what ends up happening with it. This is awesome. I congratulate you on all your success, David. This has been fantastic. Where can people reach out to you to find out more about all the things that you're doing, find out more about Pencerita and everything else you've got going on?
Yeah, I so appreciate it. So the website is pencerita.com, pencerita.com. You can sign up for our newsletter. We're actually in an active beta right now. So we're planning on launching probably Q2 of next year if we hit all of our goals. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn. I'm David Tamm. I think I'm the only David Tamm on there, but I look like this. And if you're listening, I sound like this, right? Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you so much, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us, David. Wish you nothing but success in the future. And we'll have to, for sure, stay in contact.
I would love that. Thanks a lot, Allan. Appreciate it.
If you've enjoyed today's podcast, please leave us a rating. And for daily inspiration and business tips, follow Allan on Instagram. Until next time, remember, we build the future one entrepreneur at a time.